The Cincinnati Bengals are giving us plenty of clues about their draft intentions, now with pre-draft visits for James Pearce Jr. and Jonah Savaiinaea.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. I'm your host, Jake Liscow. He's your host, James Rapien. We are Locked On Bengals on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for making Locked On Bengals your first listen, and a shout out to all the everydayers out there. If you're looking for a place to get daily Bengals coverage, we've been doing it since 2016 here on Locked On Bengals. You are in the right place. You can hit that subscribe button to make sure you don't miss an episode, and you can become an everydayer here on Locked On Bengals. Today, we've got a couple more top 30, I guess we're not supposed to call them that, 30 visits to talk about for the Cincinnati Bengals, the official pre-draft meetings where they bring prospects in and get to talk to them in person at Paycor Stadium, and what clues those give us about what the draft intentions really are for the Cincinnati Bengals. We spent some time in Mock Draft Monday this week, James, talking about what if there's a priority at linebacker? What if there's a priority at safety? Then when you look at their pre-draft visits and the trends there, we'll talk specifically about James Pearce Jr. and Jonah Savaiinaea to start today's episode. Doesn't seem like there's a huge priority on linebacker, for example, but there is certainly a priority on a guard. Talking to numerous guards throughout this process, Savaiinaea just the most recent, and a variety of different types and positions on the defensive front.
Yeah, and I think the defensive front element is interesting. The past couple of shows, what have we talked about? Well, we talk about Walter Nolan, and he's a guy that I think a lot of our listeners and viewers would want. And now James Pearce Jr., another guy that should come in and you would hope be able to bolster your pass rush right away. A freakish athlete, someone that you don't really question from a pass rush or a juice standpoint. It's everything else. And that's why I think when you look at these two guys, and Nolan and Pearce, not only did they meet with them at the combine, but they're bringing them in for pre-draft visits. And it's because there's a lot of questions. And I'm not sure it's just football. I think the off the field is certainly it's certainly a topic, and it certainly matters. It's a character discussion. At the same time, I have football questions about James Pearce Jr., and I think the Bengals will too. I think they're going to openly wonder, all right, how are you going to hold up against the run? How are you going to hold up against the AFC North? Are you going to be able to be someone that we can rely on, or are you just a guy that comes in on 3rd and 16? Which they can use that. But you've brought this up. Do you invest the 17th overall pick? Do you use the 17th overall pick on a guy that's just giving you some juice on passing downs? And I think that's what they have to work through. It's something that if they feel like with time, he's 21 years old, with time, he can build the play strength and the ability to contain the run and defend the run the way they're going to ask their defensive ends to do it, and we know they're going to ask their defensive ends to do it, well, then I think they could certainly be in on James Pearce Jr. because he checks a lot of boxes. But that is a big football question. And then just the general feel from a character standpoint, I think, is going to be crucial in these meetings and these visits with these guys, because that could be the determining factor. Hey, let's go James Pearce Jr. at 17. Let's go Walter Nolan at 17. Let's pivot and go with another position at 17.
This is the first, notably, 30 visit or official visit that the Bengals have hosted for an edge rusher, as far as I know this year.
Mm-hmm.
We know they've talked to a number of interior defensive linemen. You mentioned Walter Nolan. We talked about that one yesterday. We've talked about Darius Alexander, so a couple of interior defensive linemen there. And like Walter Nolan, James Pearce Jr. is another one of those 30 visit plus combine points of contact for the Cincinnati Bengals, which is typically, in recent years, a very strong indicator of interest from the team that they are seriously considering this player with one of their picks. Now, go back to last week. We looked at Matt Miller's mock over at ESPN.com. He did a 7-round mock, and James Pearce Jr. was a 2nd-round pick in that mock for the Cincinnati Bengals. Is this a a visit that is setting the stage for Pearce as a potential first-round pick, a potential trade-back candidate, a potential second-round pick. I think that range of outcomes is all in play because, as you're talking about, James, there are some questions around his profile in general. Now, where those questions don't exist are his burst, his ability to get off the line, his ability to beat the tackle to the spot. And if he gets there before you, you're laid off the ball, you're trying to block him in a pass rushing situation, and he times up that snap better than you as an offensive tackle, you're done. He's just at your quarterback before you've taken 3 steps. He's got that kind of get off. And obviously everybody saw him run the 40 in his hoodie because he forgot his shirt. And it was a crazy 40. So like the acceleration, the burst, the explosion off the line, all awesome. And you can even see that in the run game too, when he's a backside defender. When he's unblocked on the backside, he's chasing down that running back if you're able to hold up on the front side and force that running back to read things out and make a cut. He's chasing that down. You don't want to leave James Pearce unblocked on the backside, at least on his college tape. So those things are there. But how well is he turning the corner? He didn't do his agility testing. So while we're talking about him as this hyper athletic player that's had great pass rushing success in college against a higher quality level of tackle in the NFL that he wasn't really tested against much in his college football days. When he played against better competition, his productivity did go down. You would expect that to be the case. But like a lot of players in this class, James, when I went and looked at a lot of the pass rushers in this class that you're looking for an injection of pass rush juice for this Bengals defensive line, so many of them did not face any players you're expecting to be drafted, at least in the first couple of days of this draft. And he did have a game against Ohio State. He did have a game against Georgia. Those were not his best games, to put it lightly. And there are times where I wonder, against a higher level of competition, will he be that consistent pass rusher in those situations where you need a win, 3rd and 10, 2-minute drills, end of game situations where you're bringing him off the bench to get after the passer? I think he can do a lot of that. Don't get me wrong, but it's just some projecting required there. And since he's young, that's fine. You know, he can get better. He can improve the pass rush moves. He can fill out a little bit, but I think that's why there is this range when you're looking at where he could be drafted. And that's why I wonder, you know, is this a first round visit or is this a first to second round visit?
It could be both, right? And that's what's so tough about where the Bengals are picking in general. You're going to see a theme. Like you could look at Gray Zabel, right? And I'm sure we'll spend time on him. And he tested really well. And you look at him, it's an elite athlete at guard. And it's like, man, do you consider him at 17? And if they took him, there's going to be a lot of people that say, man, that's early. With James Pearce, they'll see Tennessee, they'll see the measurables, and they'll see, oh man, he's going to give you some juice on the edge, but it may be early. And the unknown factor, character stuff is like medicals. Sometimes it's tough to figure out.
Yeah,
like
we'll get some hints at it, but never the full picture.
Never. Like Jahad Campbell is dealing with the labrum issue. And it's like, all right, well, is that it? Because if that's it, that doesn't really scare me. Is there more there? Is there not more there? I don't know. Teams know. But like, I would really like Jahad Campbell if it's just to fix your labrum and get the heck out there and play linebacker for the Cincinnati Bengals. And we'll get to more in the linebacker in a bit. But that's what's tough is a lot of these guys you talk about, you're going to say, yeah, but. Mm-hmm. And the Bengals are probably going to end up with a yeah, but. And that doesn't mean it's the wrong prospect. It's just what they're doing, what they're meeting about, probably right now as we're recording this on Tuesday afternoon at Paycor Stadium, on the non-flooded side of Paycor Stadium, handling what is some in-depth draft meetings.
Yeah, I think that no matter what, they're picking a direction, and they're going to have to pick something they can live with, whether that's a tackle that they have to move into guard, whether that's a safety that you need to project a little bit into how they're going to fit into the defense, whether that's an edge rusher that has some questions about the way they defend the run, has productivity questions, didn't complete their athletic profile because guys more and more aren't doing all of the testing, especially if they're expecting to go in the first round. That's the nature of this year's draft. I think that's the nature of a lot of drafts. That's why you have to make the best bet you can using all the information available to you that gives the player you pick, the best chance of success. Let's continue with the themes of these 30 visits, the official visits for the Cincinnati Bengals. Jonah Savatanaya, the latest in potential interior offensive line candidates with some tackle experience for the Cincinnati Bengals. We'll discuss that visit and that player coming up next.
Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is America's #1 sports book, and the NBA playoffs are almost here. FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action right now. When you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. And the NBA might be the most unpredictable sport, Jake. It really might be. I mean, the fact that the Denver Nuggets, who won the championship just a couple of years ago, and have Nikola Jokic, who's going to be second in MVP voting. I think he's going to lose it to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. By the way, you can use FanDuel to wager on that. It's wild to see that they fired their head coach, Michael Malone, that they fired their GM as well. They clearly didn't like the direction they were going. And maybe you think that's going to give the Nuggets the boost that they need to get back to the NBA Finals. Or maybe you think that the Thunder are just going to roll through the West. Regardless, the NBA playoffs are here. NFL draft odds are here. Take advantage of America's #1 sports book right now by placing your first $5 bet, and you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today.
The Bengals have been doing their homework, certainly, on interior offensive linemen in this class. There is no ambiguity on this one. They will be drafting. Can I say this? Can I make a prediction here that is this definitive? They will be drafting an offensive lineman in their first 3 rounds. Do you think that that's 100% at this point? It's pretty
100%.
close, right?
It's 100%. You can't do what they've done or not done.
Mm-hmm.
And by not done, I mean add a starting guard if you don't really like day 1 and day 2 of this guard class. And that's what I think is we're seeing right now for sure.
The visits really suggest they would really like to pick one of these guys, probably on day 2. But I think we'll see if there's a late visit for Kelvin Banks. That could tell us that they're hoping he makes it to their pick and they're honing in there. Josh Simmons would be interesting. An Ohio State guy. Those Ohio State visits don't count against their allotment for 30. So Josh Simmons would be interesting. But they have met with Josh Connerly. They've met with Ariante Ursary. Those are both tackles, college tackles from Oregon and Minnesota, respectively. Ursary almost certainly for the Bengals would kick into guard, would be a second-round idea. Josh Connerly kind of in that 1-2 range again, where I wonder if that's maybe a trade-back visit or maybe they just think really highly of him. In addition to that, we know they've had a 30 visit with Charles Grant, William & Mary tackle, who will project into the guard position in the NFL. And now Jonah Savatanaya is another one of those combine and 30 visit guys, which again tells you about a serious level of interest for the Cincinnati Bengals. Almost certainly a second-round consideration. A third-year player, junior from Arizona, whose strength as a tackle was in pass protection and would be asked to, for the Bengals, play guard, where a lot of that stuff is different, but the athleticism requirement not quite as high, but had a great shuttle, especially if he was playing guard. Really good size for the position at 6'4", 324, nearly 34-inch arms. So a lot of things there that you really like. The hole in his profile right now was his run blocking production, at least according to PFF. Maybe that gets easier for him. Maybe he's a more natural run blocker when you get him in a phone booth, when you get him at guard instead of tackle. But another one of these guys, James, that is a college tackle that would project to guard in the NFL, which I know we've talked about. We've spent time on this topic. I think I talked about it with Joe Goodberry a week ago. Is scary for a lot of Bengals fans thinking about some of their failed experiments in this area, but is a common pathway for some of the really good guards in the NFL. Yeah,
it is. And it's about time the Bengals get it right at some point, I hope, when it comes to that. No, I think when you read, if you just read what Lance Zierlein wrote about Savatanaya, durable 3-year starter who is built like a right guard, but has valuable protection experience as a college tackle. Savatanaya doesn't have the athleticism to stick at right tackle in the NFL, but can play there in a pinch with some help. He's wide and can engulf smaller opponents as a base blocker, and he goes on and on and on. But they're looking for a right guard. Like that's exactly what they're looking for. I think they likely view, not that they're not open to offensive line in round 1, but I think they view the meat of where they need to get a guard in rounds 2 and 3. And that's why they're doing their homework, in-depth homework on these guys. I think in an ideal world, they would get a defensive playmaker in round 1 in their minds. And maybe that changes over the next couple of weeks. But I think if the draft were today, they're thinking defensive playmaker round 1, rounds 2 and 3, got to leave with a guard. And probably the next best defensive player, but open, because they are meeting with the Ohio State guys, like you mentioned, Travion Henderson and Judkins as well. Yeah, Quinshon Judkins. Sorry, it took me a second to. Anyways, Quinton Judkins?
Yeah.
Quinton Judkins. There we go. Quinshon. So I was right. All right. Yeah. You got me questioning my names. Quinshon Judkins.
That's my job. Don't take my job, James.
It's ridiculous. I know. I can't believe it. Pretty soon I'm going to be saying who they have a good one. And that's just going to be, wild. And anyways, in the middle of the show, though, I just won't know when to say it. But they're doing their due diligence on these guys because the draft can break in a much different way. And what if it breaks where they don't have a real, legitimate offensive line option that they value at 49? And then the same thing happens at 81. They can't just reach and take one. And that's what's tough. And same thing goes at pick 17. You can't just take a defensive player to take a defensive player. What if they love Kelvin Banks, or they love Josh Simmons and they're comfortable with the medicals, or insert whoever, and there are other prospects to name. The point is, though, I think that you're starting to see their game plan, and usually that plan, they're going to try to stick to it, but you just never know how the draft is going to unfold. There were multiple years where they thought they were taking a tight end on day 2 or early day 3, and it just never fell their way. And that's why up until last year, it was like, man, they haven't drafted a tight end in forever. And so we'll see if their plan that they formulate they can stick to it and get the guys they're targeting.
Yeah, and Savaiinaia is a guy that could be second round, could be third round, depending on where you look. PFF has him at 90 on their board right now. Brandon Thorne has a second round grade on Savaiinaia, a potential impact player second round grade, 7.5 out of 10 over at Bleacher Report. That's 59 on their board. Overall, his consensus ranking, as we're tracking it so far, is at 57. We'll get the Beast tomorrow, Wednesday. It's Beastmas Eve as we're recording this one. Looking forward to seeing how he fits into Dane Brugler's massive publication over at The Athletic as well. But as a player that has a strength in pass blocking, that you're talking about moving inside to play to his strengths, where he has the size, he has the power, he has the, as Brandon Thorne writes it, initial quicks to earn him a starting role at the best suited position for him, which he says is a guard in the NFL. That seems like it would fit. And so there might be some development to do. There might be some technical refinement there that needs to happen. That would be Scott Peters' job. And Scott Peters, this is, talk about all the pressure on Al Golden to find the right guys for his defense and to rehabilitate this defense that fell off and find ways to get these guys to perform at that level. There's also a lot on Scott Peters' plate right now to be part of this process that is identifying a player in this draft who is going to have to start almost certainly very early in his career, if not immediately in Cincinnati, and be an adequate pass protector right away. That is a hard thing to do for any player. There's often a transition. We've talked about with most rookies, guard no exception. But if you can get it right there, you can get a huge value add to this team. And so it's nice to see, and I would expect them to continue to do. It's nice to see them doing this homework on their options for guards early in the draft.
Sure. And if, let's say they really like Savaiinaia and he does fall to pick 81, but they've taken Josh Simmons in round 1. Or Kelvin Banks or whatever. Okay. If you really like him, still take him. I'm fine with 2. One is a must. You must do it. But if they the value that Amarius Mims brings, knowing that you can drop back and feel confident that he's going to be a quality pass protector. Think about having that at guard with a rookie that you know is going to be under contract for 4, maybe 5 years for a first rounder, or at least 4 years in Seva Anaya's case. Like, that would be great. Mm-hmm. So yeah, totally with you there. And the double dip on offensive line, I don't necessarily think that'll be a huge part of the plan, but you can't rule it out, especially given where they're at and how much homework they're going to be doing on these guys.
Yeah, we'll finish up the show with a little bit more on that topic as far as what they'll leave the draft with holes. I think no matter what, but there's a bit of an absence of pre-draft linebacker visits. And if that is expected to be a priority with Jermaine Pratt still on the roster, will we see that change? Let's discuss that topic a little bit more as it gives us hints about the Bengals draft plans coming up next.
You've probably heard of Chewy. They really have everything you need or could want for your pet to keep your pet happy and healthy. Whether you're shopping for food, treats, even pet healthcare, Chewy makes it fast, easy, and affordable. I've used Chewy for years for our dog, and it's a no-brainer. Whether it's dental care, whether it's heartworm medication, whether it's something as simple as food, auto ship is a game changer. Finn, our dog's food, is auto shipped all the time. It's something I do not have to think about. And that's the beauty of Chewy. Is Chewy makes it easy to manage your pet's health with prescriptions, telehealth, vet visits, in-person vet clinics, but also all of the day-to-day stuff that you need and want to take care of your pet. So make sure that you check out Chewy right now. You've heard of Chewy. Maybe you haven't used it. Take this as a sign to give it a try. They have everything you need for your pet. And right now you can save $20 on your first order and get free shipping by going to chewy.com or clicking the link in the description. Save $20 on your first order with free shipping by clicking the link in the description or going to chewy.com. Minimum purchase required. New customers only. Terms and conditions apply. See site for complete details.
The idea of taking 2 offensive linemen in this draft should be exciting.
Yeah.
It should be. We have 2 young guys that we think can anchor the interior of this offensive line going into the future. We've got Matt Lee on the roster. We like our depth there.
Yep.
They gave Cody Ford a deal. They signed Lucas Patrick. Cordell Volson still on the roster. Maybe wouldn't be if that was the case, given the contract situation there and his likely role if they were to draft 2 offensive linemen who would be competing for those interior spots. But the idea of a better than average offensive line, some athleticism on the interior, some youth to go along with Amarius Mims should be appealing. But with 6 picks, and obviously the missing pick is a 7th round pick, so it's not like you're finding a starter there most likely, but you're giving something up. And we've talked about the need for them to add players on the defensive interior, on the edge, at safety perhaps, at linebacker most likely. If you can find a tight end in this class, that would be great. If they can find another running back in this class, I think that would be a potential benefit to the team as well. And you can't do all those things. And if you double dip, you can do even fewer of those things. And so when we're looking at where the Bengals are spending their pre-draft resources to get more information about players, that's why these things are so relevant, because it's telling us, okay, these are their priorities. They are looking at the edge. They are looking at the interior defensive line. They are looking at plenty of offensive linemen. They've looked at some safeties and some depth. Mm-hmm. But the only significant interest they've shown externally in any linebackers is they met with Barrett Carter, Clemson linebacker at the Combine, then Nicholas Martin, Oklahoma State linebacker, in for one of their 30 visits. And that's it.
And you're talking about a guy that's day 3. And so I wouldn't be mad at that, by the way. Like if they wait till day 3 to get a linebacker, like fine. I would probably say guard, safety, pass rush. Like there are a lot of things that if you really wanted to rank what would be ahead of linebacker. I think a lot of people would have linebacker and just the thirst for another playmaker on defense ahead of running back, but running back's a need, and this is an awesome class. So if you leave the draft without a running back, that is going to suck, to be quite honest with you.
I think it could be fine. Personally, I think we might disagree a little bit on this one. Like, it'd be nice to get one. I get that.
Samaje Perine is the worst RB2 in the NFL today.
Worst things have happened.
Absolutely. He's the worst. Now,
I'm not arguing. I mean, I might argue that. I would have to look. I'm just saying worst things have happened.
Can he pass protect? Absolutely. But you're not going to want to hand the ball off to him 15 times. And I like Perine, but he's an RB3 where he's going to contribute on special teams and run block or in pass protect for you when you need it. But you want someone out of this class. And so, because there are guys like Travion Henderson is RB1 last year. RB1. And it's probably not even close. And so that's just giving you an idea of how these classes can go up and down. So if you pick a running back in the 4th round this year, well, that's a day 2 guy last year. And that's where I'm at with it. So odds are at some point running back will be the best player available. Maybe not. And if it doesn't fall, it doesn't fall. I'm not saying force it for a running back, but it would be nice to take advantage of this class because I'm not sure there's a stronger position in this class. I think defensive line has been overblown. I think offensive line is at least at guard is better than we realize, but it's a lot of tackle to guard converts. Safety is not nearly as deep as it may feel to some people because we're talking about the same 6 names, to be honest with you. So that's where it's lean. And this draft doesn't feel great at a lot of spots. We haven't really talked about receiver at all, but it doesn't feel great there. And by the way, if the Bengals wanted to go to their patented day 3 receiver, I don't know how they could really in this draft. It wouldn't feel good if they did.
I've just to give you a few mocks. I've managed it. I'm not picking a running back in this. Yeah,
sure. And so that receiver better be able to contribute as RB or as wide receiver 3. Because I'd say a lot of running backs in this class come in as your second best runner behind Chase Brown. There are a decent amount of guys that can do that. And that's all I mean is you don't want to be in the middle of the year next year and it's Samaje Perine and Travion Williams as your 1-2. That feels rough, to be honest. I get it. Running back might not be valued as high for some people, but that would be kind of scary, I would say.
It's just a concern that if they were to not have Chase Brown for any period of time, because if they have Chase Brown, just like last year, it's fine. Chase Brown's a really good player.
He also can't
do the
play.
Things you need him to.
He also can't play and have the workload he had last year when he was having that workload. That's extremely unrealistic.
Maybe? Is it? Why? Tell me more.
All right. You think Chase Brown is going to play 50 plus snaps every week? And it was 85% or 90% of the offensive snaps. It's just unrealistic. What other running back is doing that?
I mean, I'm not saying it's ideal, but again, if it's Chase Brown and Samaje Perine and those 2 guys are healthy the entire year,
well,
I think it's fine.
If you go in Madden and turn injuries off, well, sure, but this isn't that way. We saw Chase Brown got hurt last year.
I know it's an injury risk situation. How much are you willing to invest in a position that
I don't
play
think
more than 10 snaps a week unless there's an injury?
I disagree there. I think the only reason why Brown played that much is because their running back room sucked. It was the worst in the NFL behind Brown.
But you're assuming that they're trusting the rookie running back to play over Samaje Perine right away, which they wouldn't.
I think they absolutely, as a runner, 100%.
As a runner, which is 5 snaps a week. Taking Chase Brown off the field for a spell there are guys. Runner?
No, this idea that Chase Brown is this all-pro, he should split time. He's a 5th round running back. Yes,
but you're talking about a guy running snaps for a rookie. That's what you're talking about being worried about right now.
I'm not worried. See, you're twisting my words. I'm saying I'm not passing on Travion Henderson for a defensive lineman that's 90th on my board or
that's
a linebacker, but 65th on my board. Fine. That's not that extreme because Travion Henderson's going to probably be in the Bengals top 40. Spoiler. Would not be shocked at all if he's even higher than that. And so that's my point is a lot of people would say, oh, well, you have to take D-line. You have to take offensive line there. And it's all right, well, who's there? And the running back is coming in. Travion Henderson for sure would come in right away. And it would be like, I bet it would be like 40-60. Like it wouldn't need to be 80-20. It's 80 Chase Brown, 20 everybody else, when everybody else isn't good enough to eat more snaps and play more snaps. That's why.
The interest the Bengals have shown in running back, regardless of what we think, is a combine meeting with Ashton Genty, who almost certainly will not be available to them. A combine meeting with Cam Scatterbo from Arizona State, who would probably be available to them in the third round or so. Maybe he doesn't quite get to their third round pick. Maybe he does. Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins, the two Ohio State running backs, do not count against their 30 visit limit, but they have had them in for meetings in Cincinnati. That is the extent of their interest in running back. And there are interesting players there. I have a hard time imagining any of the premier running backs being significantly better than their other options in round 2 and round 3, but you could certainly see it just in terms of where the overall player would be on the board, plus the need adjustment and the value adjustment for the position. I'm not saying, versus your 65th player. I'm saying I can see very well a scenario where, you're 40 to 45 and it's a position that you value more highly and a position that is a need for a starter. And that's a very easy way to go.
And it would still be at some point not getting a running back in this, because again,
what are you giving up is my question. Like what thing are you just saying? Like, we're just not going to do it.
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is that running back is the best position in this draft, the best, and it's not even close. I don't even know what would rival it.
I don't know if I agree with that.
What's better?
I mean, I just don't think
What's
it's
better?
an extremely good running back class. Just looking at the grades we have so far, defensive tackle certainly is better.
Maybe at the top, sure.
Through like the third round.
Okay, well, no one wants a running back in the first 3 rounds. So if the Bengals
you're
take
talking about
back,
Travion Henderson for the last 5 minutes.
No, see, you and everybody else that does this is taking it wrong. This started with me saying that if the Bengals don't leave the draft with a
then you
running
started
back,
talking about Travion Henderson.
because they're interested in him, and I would be open to it too. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to be mad if we're leaving the draft Friday night and they haven't addressed running back. They at all these spots, guard, well, they could sign Brandon Scherf. Running back, well, they could go out and get J.K. Dobbins. Like, they can address it after the draft too. And so you can sell me on that idea if you miss out on the running backs and you go out and get someone that can actually run the football. Right now they have one guy who can do that. It does still matter. They suck at under center runs on 3rd and 4th and 1. Part of that's guard. Part of that is they need someone that can actually do that. And so that's an element that they should address. When they address it, maybe it isn't the draft. Maybe the draft doesn't fall their way and they do it in free agency. There aren't a ton of guys out there, but Dobbins is the one that could certainly help in that department.
Started this with how they haven't necessarily been super active, at least as far as we know, with linebackers. Ended up on a tangent. That's a fun tangent, though. I just think ultimately, well, philosophically, I'm not opposed to a running back. I think in context, it might be very hard to find a place where running back is screaming as a BPA and you're not giving up something else significant to take it this year if you're the Bengals. Could happen on day 3.
I would be shocked. I'd be shocked if that's the case because running back's just so much, it's deeper. But
you think very highly of this running back class, I think, compared to me, where I see a few players at the top end and I don't really see a bunch of depth players that I'm very excited about. Like, there are a couple guys on day 3, but and that's where I think it would be day 3, to be clear.
You're like on an island here. Everyone loves this running back class.
The sheet does not love the running back class. I'll tell you that.
All right. Well, when the beast comes out tomorrow, it's going to love the running back class.
Sure.
I'm just saying,
like there's a number of players.
A lot of the sheet. The problem is a lot of these guys didn't do everything. So that's part of it. But Henderson's high on the sheet, to give you an example.
Yeah, he is. So. But he's also tied for what would have been first in last year's class with Jonathan Brooks is how that works out.
But that's what I'm saying. He'd be the first, and he's not hurt. So he'd be the first one off the board last year. That's all.
regardless, I again have a hard time imagining it being the best option for the Bengals before day 3.
Sure. No, but would be shocked if there isn't a running back at some point on day 3 where they're like, yeah, just like they did with Chase Brown. And that was a bad running back class. After
Could be.
the first couple guys. There's a drop.
I knowing them, I would think they would likely, not entirely, but likely want to check off several boxes before they get there. I even think
Sure.
linebacker, it could be one of those boxes, unless they feel really good about getting a guy they really like in the following round, or they're doing some maneuvering that we
Day 3
can't predict.
linebacker isn't starting either. We'll just keep debating, but day 3 linebacker won't start.
I think
So-
there's a better chance of that happening than a day 3 running back starting.
Starting, sure, starting. I mean, as in the first player on the field for that, but playing more snaps, I
Yeah.
think the running back would.
I think
They have
there's a
they have
solid
an-
chance.
They have an awful running back room.
They don't have a
It's-
second starting linebacker if Jermaine Pratt isn't on the team. Period.
Well, he's on the team.
And will he be on the team?
He wouldn't be on the team right now if it were me, but it's one of those things.
Let's
All right,
wrap
let's
the
just
episode.
Let's do tomorrow's show right now. Let's just roll this into the next show.
We're going to wrap up there. That's going to do it for this episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. Until next time, thanks for listening. Hoo day, and have a good one.